It was getting hard not to hate the rest of the crew, and it wasn't their fault. It took everything she had left not to swing a fist when a heavy hand pressed down on Vanessa's shoulder. The gesture intended to be reassuring, but at any other time, she would have welcomed the touch. Right now, she desperately wanted Christina to fuck all the way off. So, are you going to tell me everything is going to be okay? You know how hard this is. Or are you just going to ask if I want to talk about it? Vanessa said, the words dripping with sarcasm, so thick Christina would need a mop to clean it up. Come on and just fuck off. There was a moment of silence as Christina contemplated her response. They had entered the system earlier today, and they were cruising towards their destination. The gentle hum of the engines filled the silence, as much as sensation coming up through Vanessa's boots as something she could actually hear. There were no sounds otherwise. Everyone else was too far away. There were no alerts going off. Well, one sound. Christina's breath, soft and gentle. Vanessa was used to that particular sound, although she preferred it faster, higher pitched, and on the brink of, I'm going to tell you that you're a real bitch when you're like this, Christina said, derailing Vanessa's train of thought. That actually got a laugh out of Vanessa, a harsh, hollow one. Ha ha! Yeah, I guess I deserved that one. Christina pulled her hand away. It was a moment of relief, and then an empty feeling that followed. Before she had realized she made the decision, Vanessa grabbed Christina's wrist and put it back on her shoulder. Christina squeezed. She was so good to Vanessa sometimes, or at the very least, she was so good at putting up with Vanessa's bullshit. End of the day, that was the same thing. You don't have to do this, you know, Christina said, her voice both gentle and resolute. An iron hand and a fuzzy mitten. We can handle this. You'll still get your cut of the contract. Come on. Would you make the same offer if it was Susan? Or Nova? Vanessa leaned against Christina's hand for a moment, then turned her head to the side and kissed her knuckles. Let her glimpse Christina out of the corner of her eyes. She had silken red hair running down her back, parted down the middle. Vanessa knew that she parted it with a ruler pressed against her scalp. She knew that in part because she had given Christina the idea. Her cheekbones were soft on her heart-shaped face, her eyes a soft green that mirrored Christina's. However, her overall build was that of a warrior, solid, corded muscle that was starting to go a bit soft, also of late. She was changing, and she likely would continue to do so. Vanessa did adore her, and wished she could let go and fully give Christina the love she deserved. Maybe after this Vanessa could. Just one more job, and then maybe Vanessa could let go. Instead, since Christina hadn't responded to the earlier question, Vanessa pushed her again, her voice a bit rougher this time. We both know you wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't have let them come this far. Christina gave Vanessa's shoulder a quick squeeze again, just enough to be reassuring, not pushing over the line into pain, although it was a little bit close to that. So Christina was actually a bit upset, while also being understanding. You learn things about people. You learn even more if you fight alongside them. You learn even more if you fought alongside and shared a bed with them. Which unfortunately meant Christina knew Vanessa as well as Vanessa knew her, meaning Christina wasn't going to stop there. I'm letting you come along because I care about you, jackass. I know how much it means to you to be there, but you don't have to. Vanessa took a deep breath. Deep, slow, heavy. Then looked at Christina. When Vanessa spoke, her voice was tank treads on gravel. It killed my sister. I'm going to get my payback. Christina studied her face for a moment longer before speaking. I know it's going to be hard. Just another leech, Vanessa said. I have a personal reason for wanting this one, Dad. But at the end of the day, it's still just a leech. Besides, you need me here to make this contract guild-sanctioned. Means it is classified as vengeance, not an act of war. You know there are loopholes, Christina said. And you know I don't give a fuck. The gazes met for a moment and Vanessa felt Christina's hand leave her shoulder. There was a hesitation to how it left. Oh. Christina was hurt. Vanessa had misread the situation. Well, fuck. She should make it up to Christina after this job. Vanessa knew she hadn't been herself since Stella had died. It'd be easier once the vampire was killed. Granted, that was easier said than done. Mom had taught them that. It had been a decade and a half ago. People love using grandiose fucking bullshit names for us. Mom took a long, slow drag on a cigarette and exhaled a cloud that rose up from her narrow lips towards the narrow ceiling of their narrow apartment. Chemek was not a glorious city. It was not a grand city. It was, however, a crowded city on a tiny moon that was the only habitable rock remaining in the system. Some of them would claim we trace a lineage back to the shattered earth. Stupid fucks. Everyone claims that. Vanessa hated it here. Hated it down to her core. It didn't help that the cheap plaster that was used for the walls had turned yellow from Mom's disgusting habit. It didn't help that Mom was sitting in the only chair they had. Dad was lying in the bed on the other side of the place. Her sister Stella sat next to Vanessa on the floor, looking up at Mom with wide, enraptured eyes. Mom saw the look in Stella's eyes and her face softened. She always got softer when she looked at Stella. She bent down and ruffled Stella's scarlet locks. Stella giggled. They were too old for this. They weren't even minors anymore, but with them sitting on the floor and Mom this deep into her drinks, when she was drunk, Mom would often treat them like they were children. Well, she'd treat Stella like that. Vanessa wanted to lean over. Maybe if she got Mom's attention, Mom would rub her head. She refrained. She knew better. Don't let them catch you like that, Mom said. She was speaking to both of them, but as always, her eyes were on Stella. Stella and Vanessa had both thought they were boys back then. They were using different names then, but Vanessa had replaced those in her mind so fully that even in her memory it was Stella and Vanessa. And back then, Stella had already looked like a girl, small and radiant, with big eyes and soft features, and Vanessa couldn't help but imagine what Stella would have looked like as a girl at that age. Not herself. Even with estrogen, she was big and blocky and nothing like the perfect angel sitting next to her. It wasn't Stella's fault that Mom favored her. It was the fact that Mom was the fucking worst. What names shouldn't we use then? Stella asked. None of this grandiose shit about being witch hunters or demon slayers or, I don't know, fucking vampire hunters. Definitely not a xeno-eradicator or whatever those fuckers are calling themselves. This isn't some grand mission. This isn't some holy crusade. It's vermicide. You understand me? Mom gestured with the lit cigarette towards Stella and Vanessa. Vanessa tensed. The cigarette was getting low. The ash a long and dangling appendage at the end. Unwanted. Vestigial. And certain to very quickly draw her ire if Vanessa wasn't careful. Right, Stella said, oblivious to the danger. Mom, Vanessa said. Your ash. The backhand didn't actually catch Vanessa off guard. She couldn't do anything to stop it, of course. It snapped her head to the side and rocked her back, but all that Vanessa could think, as Star's filter vision was, I should have known better. You want to interrupt me again, Brett? Mom asked, glaring at Vanessa. Vanessa just shook her head. 50-50 chance, that's what Mom wanted. Or, I asked you a question. I expect a fucking answer. No, ma'am, Vanessa said, doing her best to keep the bitter note out of her voice. Mom gestured to Stella. She doesn't need correction the way you do. You know that, right? You should be more like, ah! The ash that had been burning down spilled over and caught on Mom's finger. Mom hissed and motioned for Vanessa. Vanessa closed her eyes and leaned in, holding up her hands. Silently she pleaded, Please the hands, please the hands, please the hands. She never found out where Mom was going to extinguish that cigarette. Stop it, Stella shouted. Shit, Vanessa thought. Mom froze and stared at Stella. Did you just tell me what to do? No, I just, Stella was smart but lacked common sense. Vanessa knew she was about to get beaten badly. Not Stella, of course. She would watch while Vanessa took her beating. I'm not risking brain damage on you, Mom would say to Stella. This one's already worthless, so you can just watch her take your beating. Vanessa knew better. It was just that Mom loved Stella more. It was the one way Vanessa was her mother's daughter. But Stella recovered and rallied. I wanted to know about vampires. You warned us about how they're among the most dangerous kind of... Don't get that wrong, Vanessa silently urged. Don't call them monsters, please, please, please. But parasite, but how do you kill them? Now, that's a good fucking question, Mom said, letting go of Vanessa's arm. Vanessa made herself move slowly to avoid drawing Mom's attention. But when Mom got really intense about killing these things, she often would forget what she was doing beforehand. See, these are the kind of questions you should be asking. Vanessa nodded. She knew better than to speak right now. When Mom was like this, it was best to be seen, not heard. Never speak first when Mom was like this. You're gonna hear a lot of bullshit. That they can't cross running water or that their castles are actually tame dungeon cores. That's all bullshit. There are 3 things that you can actually use. Aside from sunlight. Stella, why does sunlight work? They are powered by a blood star god. They cannot handle the light of a true star at intensities greater than 700 lumens per meter squared. It is both a mystic and physical effect because it does not work on reflected light. Well done, Mom said. Now for the others. First, puncture the heart with wood. It disrupts their connection to the blood star god. She looked at Vanessa. Dumbass, what's a blood star god? Vanessa knew she was stupid, but she knew the answer to this. One of the entities that empower vampires. There's an unknown number of them, but it's believed to be no more than 24. The exact nature of the power a vampire gains depends on what blood star god they are connected to. All right, Christina said, then made a motion like she was taking off an invisible cap and putting another one on. Her way of signaling that she was switching from being Vanessa's girlfriend to Vanessa's captain. Mostly in a professional sense, although it did get a bit freaky with it sometimes. It was part of the fun. It was a motion Vanessa encouraged, from a game she had played with Stella as kids. Still training, practicing playing soldier together as a way to get Vanessa used to taking Stella's commands, and Vanessa thought about it often. Christina and Stella looked so much alike. Not the same, of course. Christina's red hair was coarser than Stella's. She didn't take quite as good care of her skin as Stella. Her laugh was kind of grating sometimes. There was the occasional joke about dating someone who looked so much like a sister, but Vanessa brushed them off. So what if their faces were so similar? Their bodies were different. Stella was soft and gentle in her build. It did help that Christina was getting softer. She'd asked Vanessa to take over the cooking duties, which Vanessa had happily done. The diet was a bit higher in fats and fibers than it had been, and that was having an effect on people's figures, so what? It was still healthy food. It wasn't like she was forcing Christina to do anything. Same with the workout routine. Vanessa had never asked to help Christina with it, not until Christina had hurt herself by overextending. Then Vanessa had insisted to protect Christina from pushing too hard, and Christina had agreed, and that had been the motive. Christina's workout routine was too intense. She was gonna hurt her body again, and Mom had made sure that Vanessa was an expert in taking care of a person's body. Diet, nutrition, exercise, all of it. She knew exactly how to shape someone's body. It was for Christina's own good, and so maybe the workout routine was a little bit lighter than Christina would have wanted and was part of why her figure was softening, but she was in good shape. Vanessa wasn't controlling her, just making sure she didn't push herself too hard. Vanessa had gotten her to agree to take breaks more often. It was softening her, and it was letting Christina's body rest more. Good for both of them, especially now, because Christina was here and still alive. Whatever had drawn Vanessa to someone who looked like her sister didn't matter anymore. Stella was dead. "We are close to the drop-off site," Christina said. "The moon is inhabited by a previously undocumented human civilization. Their technology stalled out around the Steam Age, and the vampires have been using it as a feeding ground. We are not doing an orbital bombardment because we do not want to anger the other vampires. We are landing. We are assaulting the castle. We are getting out. Is that going to be a problem?" Vanessa gave Christina a crisp salute. Overly formal, overly military, an inside joke between them. It helped dispel some of the tension. "Understood, ma'am," she said, clicking her heels together with the words. Christina tried to fight back a smile but failed. "I don't know if you do understand. Explain it in terms a wax licker can manage." That term of endearment stung a bit after the memory of her mother. Christina never called her dipshit or dumbass or fuckwit, but milder terms were usually fun. Usually. Vanessa considered throwing a color but decided against it. It was healing to remember she could if needed. "Step 1. Run. Step 2. Shoot the leech and any monsters it has. Step 3. Run out backwards." "Correct," Christina said. Vanessa kept her gaze straight forward, calling on all her old training. She'd done her 3 years of mandatory conscription, same as everyone else, and she had been damn good at what she did. "Ma'am, may I request a clarification, ma'am?" "That's a big word for you, Steel Skull, but go ahead." "During step 3, may I turn around? I fear attempting to run backwards will result in a catastrophic error." Christina stared at her for a moment, trying so hard to keep up the stiff exterior, but the cracks started to show and she burst into laughter. "It's good to have you back," she said. Vanessa's smile turned waxen as the memory returned. "It's good to have you paying attention, dumbass." No follow-up question. Why does wood work? Mom had never talked about this before. Vanessa didn't know the answer. She had to think quickly because Mom was still in a mood, and at any moment the situation could turn. "Because trees don't have blood?" she asked hopefully. Mom pulled her hand back and then paused as Vanessa flinched. "Not a bad guess, actually. I'm surprised. Maybe I finally knocked some fucking sense into you. The truth is, we don't know, but it has to be wood. The fact that plants don't have blood is a theory, either of the symbolic interpretation and how it impacts the magic, or that something unblooded and non-metallic disrupts their connection somehow, but it has to be through the heart. That's important. Anywhere else and the healing factor will repair the damage before it's fatal." "What else?" Stella asked. "Garlic. We know why that one works at least. Garlic contains a molecule that's similar to certain types of compounds associated with the blood-star gods, including one naturally found in the fucking leeches. Their body responds to it by trying to incorporate it the same as when they feed on each other. But since it has no fucking magic, it's just garlic, it triggers a nasty fucking reaction." Mom paused to light another cigarette. The butt of the old one was thrown into the ashtray. In the background, Dad started snoring. Fucking useless sack of shit. Supposed to be at work soon and now he's asleep. Whatever. I'll eat his boss rug for a bit and she'll forgive him again. Honestly, I think he gets off on it. Vanessa's stomach churned. Mom said it casually, like she was talking about the weather in front of her daughters. She did that a lot with her different affairs, usually with women. She always looked at Stella when she said it too, like gauging Stella's reactions. It was odd. Mom focused back in. Anyway, third method is holy water. That's just made by mixing a little bit of the divine flesh. The same amount you need to power a mech for a month of light combat. The half-kilo bricks you buy for those. First one's going to be expensive, but slice slivers of it. No more than a couple millimeters thick. You can use it to make a couple decades worth of holy water. Just keep it sealed. You do not want to find out what happens when that shit starts rotting. Of course, it was expensive. That's why they lived in a fucking shithole, even with all the money Mom made from hunting. No other reason. Not the fact that Mom's tab bars combined usually added up to more than their rent was every fucking month. Not to mention the drugs she took to manage the side effects, so she could still be an effective hunter. Those weren't exactly covered in the shattered states. Stella nodded, and then her forehead furrowed as a new question formed. Some instinct in Vanessa caused her to tense up as Stella opened her mouth. Why are they hard to kill then? If holy water is that easy to mass produce, why can't we just douse them in it? Stella realized that she had asked the wrong question too late, even though Vanessa had tried to hush her the entire time. Mom's face darkened, and she reached down and cupped Stella's chin, and Vanessa knew what was going to happen. This was going to get bad. Vanessa forcefully pulled her out of the memory before it got worse. No, she'd remembered the important parts. No need to relive that. Christina was looking at her expectantly, and Vanessa took a deep breath and went at ease. There was no need for that level of formality in a mercenary crew. She had only held onto it because the memory had hit while she was standing at attention. What had Christina said? Right. She was glad Vanessa was back. I'm not, Vanessa said roughly. She shook her head. That was the wrong tone here. She wasn't mad at Christina. She was mad at her own thoughts. At least not yet. I think I'm getting there, but I can't think past the mission yet. You sure this won't get any blowback? It's all in line with the Accords. The parasites might fuss, but not enough to make a problem for any of the empires. We'll be fine. Vanessa nodded and looked out the window. She could see the moon before them growing larger. It was covered in an interesting purple vegetation that made the whole thing look like it was twilight from up here. There were scattered fires across the globe, but it was in the shadow of its gas giant. The moon was not tidally locked. It made sense that vampires favored it so much. Its rotation was such that this half of the world was usually facing the planet, while it was in front of the sun, and facing away when it was behind the planet. Reflected starlight didn't burn them the way solar light did. They had to hide from the star, one of the few things that would kill a vampire. This one's blood star was Anthar. Any other starlight at close range would burn it. Where'd you go, sweetie? Christina said. Shit, she had noticed. Thinking about the target, Anthar, likely going to have a lot of shadows. They tend to go underground. Going to be in power armor, not suits for this one, right? Christina shook her head. We can wear the power armor, but a full-on mech suit is not going to work. No good against an Anthar anyway. You would need the reflexes of a hound to catch one. Yeah, I want to kill this thing, but not that fucking badly. Hounds had been a special interest of Stella's. She had opinions on how they worked. For a moment, Vanessa feels the pull of another memory, of laying her head in Stella's lap so that Stella could stim with Vanessa's hair while she rattled on about her theories involving the hounds of the old empire and how they compared to their modern-day counterparts and how the technology of mech and spacecrafts had advanced and how they hadn't, and how much had been lost, and Vanessa pushed the memory away before it could become another flashback, but the hole the memory put in her heart persisted. I was supposed to keep you safe. Vanessa had been the fighter of the family. Stella was the smart one, very smart. She could have gone to any school in the shattered Aegis states, but she had chosen to stay with her sister. She had become a military mechanic, then a hunter mechanic, becoming a soldier alongside Vanessa, then a pilot before finally becoming a hunter herself. She shouldn't have been out with them. "We're almost there, Christina. Gods, she really did look so much like Stella. It really was all in the face, especially when Stella had been younger, back when they were growing up in the shattered Aegis, and the older flashback reared up again, and Vanessa could not push it away in time. That's the kind of stupid-ass question I expect the dipshit to ask me. So I'm going to beat the dipshit for the rest of this lesson." Stella's eyes watered. "Please." She had been about to say don't, but Mom was already moving. "You don't need to beg, sweetie. It's going to happen either way. It's good for everyone." Mom snapped her fingers in motion towards the table. Vanessa just closed her eyes and stood up and bent over. Mom snapped her fingers again and Vanessa slid the pants down to expose her ass. She could hear Mom undoing her belt. "Chair, Stella." Stella opened her mouth but caught Vanessa's eyes. Whatever she saw on them stopped her. Stella got up and grabbed the chair, moving so she was facing Vanessa. Then she reached out her hand across the table. Vanessa took it without hesitation. It was part of the ritual, part of the lesson. The first question, "Why do I do this?" Vanessa thought but did not say. "Because you're a disgusting evil bitch who gets off on hurting her children." Besides, it wasn't her time to speak. It was her time to suffer. "Because I'm the brains and Vanessa is the muscle," Stella said, staring at Vanessa. She hadn't said Vanessa back then, of course, but Vanessa couldn't bear to remember Stella saying anything other than her real name. The first crack came down hard across Vanessa's cheeks. Mom was not holding back. She grit her teeth. Screams just encouraged Mom to go harder. And Vanessa wasn't going to give that bitch the satisfaction. The grip on each other's hands grew stronger as she clenched her fingers reflexively. "That's right, now then. Why is fighting vampires hard?" Stella took a deep breath to think. If she got the answer right, Vanessa was going to get hit. If she got the answer wrong, Vanessa was going to get hit more. Probably get a cigarette put out on her ass. Because they are fast, intelligent, and too small to easily fight from a mech. They have their castles, which are full of monsters they command, that do not share their weaknesses. They tend to inhabit worlds with minimal light, so they are not in danger from the nearby sunlight, which also favors their hunting style, and their senses over ours. The belt came down hard, right where the last one had landed. Mom had really put her back into that one. Vanessa bit her tongue to avoid crying out, and her hand clenched harder on Stella's. They did not break eye contact, even as tears welled in Vanessa's eyes. There was a dreadful pause. Had Stella been right? Was the belt going to come down again? Correct! This time it was Vanessa's mistake, not Stella's. She let out a sigh of relief. She couldn't help it. The cigarette against the small of her back returned the tension, and she clutched harder to Stella's hand. "Thank your brother," their mom said. It was impossible to erase that memory, no matter how much Vanessa tried. Mom would never see them as women. Not even now, years later. They were still her sons. "Thank him for allowing you to suffer for his safety." Thank you," Vanessa said, hating the tremble in her voice. The belt came down again, quick, fast, and sharp. Oh, she had pissed their mother off. The pain radiated through her ass cheeks, spreading around down her legs, and part of it racing treacherously into her groin, making her cock twitch. "You need to be strong enough to keep Stella alive," their mom screamed. "Crack! You need to be safe for her. Crack!" A snore from their dad reminded Vanessa that safety in theory was nearby and in practice was useless. "You need to love her more than you love yourself. It's the only way you survive. Crack!" Stella's eyes filled with tears and she nodded to Vanessa as if to give her permission. "I do," Vanessa screamed. "I do." "Good boy," Mom said. That still stung even in the memory. Stella and Vanessa had confessed to each other their hidden feelings, but not to Mom. Never to Mom. They'd be away from her soon. They were legally adults and they were trained hunters, exterminators, whatever Mom wanted them to call themselves. They were almost free. They just had to get through their conscription period. That lesson had stuck. It was one of the good memories of Stella, which is why Vanessa revisited it. But now it was an opening, festering wound in her chest, maggots crawling out of it to burrow into her heart. What was the point of it all if Stella had died anyway? At the end of the day, Mom had been terrible, but she wasn't always wrong. She knew how to be a hunter. At the end of the day, they were specialized mercenaries, and Mom was one of the best alive. She was even able to control her drinking when she was on a hunt, taking the pills that controlled the physical effects of withdrawal. She just didn't bother to stay off it. Mom would probably take them when she learned of Vanessa's failure, make sure she was sharp enough to hunt Vanessa down. When Mother found out about her failure, that Stella had died, she would kill Vanessa if she could find her. She had let them do their own thing, even as she ascended in the ranks of the Hunters Guild. By the time Vanessa and Stella finished their conscription, Mom had been able to bury the drinking deeply. No one knew that it was still a problem. She went to the meetings, she took pills to hide the effects, and had gotten adept at excuses that always managed to blame her rivals convincingly for her drunken errors. She hadn't used her influence to force them back, partially because of transition. When she couldn't force them to undo the damage they'd done to themselves, she hadn't tried to drag them back. And partially because, well, Vanessa didn't know, but it would make sense to believe that Mom didn't want to risk them telling the rest of the guild about their upbringing. And that she was still a mess. If Mom had been an eighth of the mother that she was a hunter, Vanessa and Stella would have had a much better childhood. Then again, if Vanessa was a 16th of the hunter her mother was, Stella would still be alive. Her entire existence had been to be the perfect weapon to protect her sister, and she had failed. Everything she had went through for one reason, one single solitary fucking reason, and she couldn't manage it. Something must have showed on Vanessa's face because Christina took her hand. "You're taking a break after we kill this thing, okay? We're taking a break together, I mean. We're going to spend too much money on some resort world in the Inner Empires. We're going to get stupid drunk together. We are going to take home some 20-year-old and give her so many orgasms that we've ruined her until she finds a proper woman. And then we'll figure out what comes next for us, okay?" It had never occurred to Vanessa that Christina might want a break. Vanessa had joked at one point she couldn't marry Christina because Christina was married to the job. But if she wanted a break, maybe that would be right. "Okay," Vanessa said, and she meant it this time. A break would be good for her. It would be good for them. Now that Stella was gone, she could give Christina the attention she deserved. Maybe ease up on the influence. They were good for Christina too. It wasn't just selfish, but maybe she had been wrong earlier. It was going to be okay, and she was going to be better to and for Christina. Trying to treat Christina as her own person. Vanessa was going to let go. Maybe. Head towards somewhere gentler. The Apex Federation had good therapists, and it wasn't that far. Mercs could leave the Empire if they got proper permits, and Apex had been at peace with the Shattered States for a while. Maybe. Are the others ready? That's why I came to get you. Suit up, soldier. No mechs for this job. We're going in armor. Christina knew that wasn't the real reason. Most of the mechs were still half repaired from the last job. The one that... Christina saluted before the memory could start and rushed to go get prepared. Soon. Soon this would all be over. That thought had her strangely nervous. Her hands fumbled a bit as she equipped her power armor. A lot of it was done automatically, but there were still some straps that she always secured with her hands. Technically, the machine could do it fine, and it wasn't needed, but she felt better doing it herself. Vanessa changed which strap she did manually each time she put the suit on. That way, she would be able to feel the difference when the machine did it and got it wrong. Today, it was the one securing it to her left and right hands near the wrist and one of the thigh straps. That was Mom's influence. The machine can make mistakes. You get lazy if you rely on it to do everything for you. That will get your sister killed, dipshit. Vanessa pushed aside the thought. It was easier this time. Pushing away the mood wasn't. Checking the straps hadn't helped. Her hands were shaking. The manual checks were hard today. Fuck. Fuck, fuck, fuck. That will get your sister killed. Well, she was already dead. The straps slipped from her shaking hands. Fuck it, she let the machine do it. She preferred to check those straps manually, but this was one of the few times it was better to let the machine do it. Piloting an exosuit, like this one, and piloting a mech suit were very similar once you got down to it. The difference was size, and there was no input lag between your motions in an exosuit. A good pilot in an exosuit was far more terrifying than a good soldier in a mech cockpit. Back during her service days, Vanessa's power armor had been the best the shattered Aegis states could make for those without psionics. Vanessa technically had some small degree of psionics sensibility, although thankfully it hadn't been enough for her to be put in the SAS Hound program. Stella had never gone through the testing. Mama had pulled some strings there, probably for the best. Stella hadn't been high grade, wave her hand and explode someone, but able to slam a door by staring at it hard enough. When she was scared enough, she'd never gotten it under control. And now she never would. Being a low-grade psychic had made Vanessa an ideal pilot. Psychic enough to pilot a mech suit or connect to power armor, not enough that she was worth hounding. The link that she could maintain gave her control without needing her hands to manipulate it. Stella would have been a great pilot, but combat had never been her thing. That had been Vanessa's job, the job that she had. Vanessa cut off the thought by forcing herself to go over specs she had memorized. This suit was an older model, a Mark 12 Paladin Warlord, still reactive to Vanessa's psionics, which meant it felt like a second skin once she got it on. The extra 2 limbs it provided, arcing over her shoulder and each equipped with a Xero plasma blaster, felt like they were part of Vanessa's body as much as the Surfgun micro-missile launcher in her left wrist and the Cordiac shrapnel rail in her right. The whole suit could hit 200 in a dead sprint, lift up to 10 tons, and leap several stories. It also had generated a Class E Zora barrier, probably the best personal force field available that Vanessa could have hoped to afford. In the chest of the suit was a small hunk of divine flesh that powered the whole thing, bound to one of the dead gods, so it exerted no influence. But that small bit of divine energy would be more than enough to handle a young vampire like the one that killed Stella. They'd just been unprepared. Vampire was unusually strong. It had somehow managed to create a crawling throne. They hadn't been ready for it. Memories of that day started clawing at her mind, and Vanessa pushed them aside. It didn't matter. This time, they were ready. The shrapnel rail would launch wood-tipped stakes that had been soaked in garlic and holy oil. The micro-missile launcher was equipped with smite missiles. It would disrupt any being's connection to the more hateful deities like the Bloodstar gods. Anti-undead rounds, although they would work on a number of other entities that were attached to that side of the divine. Her Zoa barrier was Class E specifically because she wanted one rated for dealing with mana and psionic-based attacks. It cost her a small fortune as well, some vulnerability when it came to physical attacks, but it was worth it in their line of work. They met in the hangar, all of them in the same basic style of power armor. They were black and coated with dull golden runes that didn't catch that much light, but were wards against the dead, similar to Vanessa's. Susan was quiet, but her look wasn't. If looks could kill Vanessa, would be smeared across the hangar. "Hey, I'm sorry about," Vanessa started to say, but was cut off by a voice in her ear. Nova. "Good evening, ladies. This is our fearless pilot coming to you live from the bridge. Just letting you all know that we are within the castle's detection range, so the vampire may know you're coming. Please try and keep local casualties to a minimum, especially the living. Remember that thralls don't kill people, vampires kill people." "I'm killing anything that gets between me and the target," Susan said. "I'm not saying we carpet bomb the village, but the guards die." Oh, absolutely, Nova said through the comms. Any that are trusted enough to guard are going to be willing collaborators on some level anyway, so blast away. Thank you, Nova, Susan said, still staring daggers at Vanessa. Vanessa had gone a bit too far earlier. Susan had been hurting and Vanessa had been as well, and they had clashed with each other. I believe Vanessa was about to grovel for mercy. I was just going to say. Vanessa bit back the urge to say something cutting. I know she mattered to you too. Loved her, Susan said, her lips curling into a sneer venomous enough to kill. Even if you think I'm not good enough for your sister, I did love her. Not the way I could. I know, I'm sorry. So it took her death for you to realize how much you suck. Well, Vanessa tried. You didn't let me finish. I'm sorry. Let me try again. I know how much she mattered to you, too, even though you are a cunt. Enough, both of you. Christina kept her voice clear. Nova, let us know when we are good to drop. Even through the microphone, Nova's voice was chipper. She always pretended she didn't hear when they fought. Christina felt bad because she knew how much nobody hated conflict more, and she just shut down whenever there was a fight. But Susan really just had never been good enough for Stella. We are almost there. The moment she said that, there was an abrupt tremble as the ship hit atmosphere. All of a sudden, there was more noise around them. The ship was well insulated enough that it didn't drown out speech, but it sure as hell could be heard. The air pressing against the hull, compressed by the sudden incoming mass at speeds that forced the air to heat up under its own compression. A dull roar like being indoors while a hurricane whipped outside. The plan is simple, Christina said, once again in her authoritative voice. The vampire cannot have a proper castle, not after we blew up her last construct. She hadn't had enough time on this world yet, but she still might have regular scanners, so we are getting dropped outside the range and going in low. Nova, stay high and scan. Warn us over comms if needed. Can do. There were a tense few moments of silence that was only broken by the sound of the atmosphere around them, gradually dying down until they couldn't hear the outside world again, even this close to the bulkhead. A few seconds later, Nova's voice broke the silence. Once again, this is your pilot speaking. We are above scanning range and outside where the scanners would be. The mana field on this world suggests there are castles of other parasites present, but no castle is detected in the area we are heading to, confirming your hypothesis. Captain, are you ready? Christina looked at Vanessa and Susan. They both nodded. Ready, she said. Nova adopted a voice like someone from one of the circus stations managing a ride, the same joke she made at every drop. Then please make sure that you no longer keep your hands and arms inside the vehicle. Do not sit down or remain seated. The vehicle doors will open manually when I push this button, and mind that first step. It's one hell of a drop. There was a heartbreakingly empty moment, and then the inner hatch of the airlock slammed shut and the outer hatch popped open. The ship was hovering right now, so the wind was manageable as they ran and leapt out into the open air. As one, the three of them ran toward the opening and leapt. The gas giant hung massive overhead. Wind whipped past Vanessa's helmet as she fell. Psychic feedback from a suit not only provided her with the hard numbers of where she was, but also the feeling of the wind rushing past her skin. Radar informed her of how close the ground was, making the ground a tangible thing she could feel drawn closer. Usually, this was a rush. She loved high-altitude, low-burn jumps. Not today. Today just brought back memories of the last jump, when Stella had still been with them. Mind that first step. It's one hell of a drop. But then she paused. Stella's voice came over the comms. Come back safe. Always do, Susan and Vanessa said in unison. They hadn't gotten along back then, but it had been better. It still ranked Vanessa that Susan used the line that Vanessa had been using with Stella all this time. Once their special thing, now shared, the inner hatch of the airlock slammed shut and the outer hatch popped open. Not the same airlock as before. This one was the larger hangar door, able to accommodate their max. The three of them leapt out. They weren't in atmosphere at first. This drop had started from orbit. The engines of the ship roared to life, pulling it out of its fall, but letting the three mechs fall beside it. Just like the power armor, the sensory input went through Vanessa's psychic link. The mech felt like her body, and up here in space with no frame of reference, she didn't even feel abnormally large. That was the main reason for the vacuum drop. It gave her brain a bit more time to adjust to her increased size. And it offered one hell of a view. They were high enough up that the planet's leaves were visible. They weren't really single solid leaves, but a mesh of plant-like branches and trunks as strong as superlaminated graphene that grew beyond the reach of the planet's atmosphere. Two massive solar sails that stretched in both directions, each as long as the planet was in radius and half as wide. They sat perfectly on the day-night terminator. There was a nearby moon, a small one, about 1.5k diameter, and from up here, Vanessa could see the massive harvesters, things that looked like the midpoint between a jellyfish and an asteroid, each a couple of kilometers long, flying towards the small body, while others were flying back. They were blue and green and purple and shone with an interior light that turned them into comets as they approached the moon. Other flyers were returning from it. "Hey, you've got incoming. Everything all right?" "Just fine, my good Butch," Nova said, a slight lilt to her voice. The pilot had been doing that more often lately. She wasn't Vanessa's usual type, but blue hair and a slender build. She had pretty gold eyes, and it wasn't like Vanessa and Christina were monogamous. Thoughts for later. Vanessa focused on now. "Good to know, Nova. Thanks. Stella, can you explain this to me?" "One day you'll learn to pay attention to the briefings," Stella said in mocking exasperation. They both knew it was just so Vanessa and her could chat a bit more. "We're going to hit Atmo. Can this wait?" Susan asked. Well, snapped really. She got defenses of Stella during these chats. Jealous bitch. You get to have a part of her that I can't. Fuck off. Vanessa kept the thought back, though. "I just feel better hearing from the expert," Vanessa said, a lilt of her own creeping in. "This world is a lithowar," Stella said in the precise tones she always used when her academic side was kicking in. "Meaning it's like you," Vanessa could hear the impish grin in Christina's voice. "It thinks it's a good idea to eat rocks." "Still can't believe you actually did that," Nova said, giggling between the words. "Hey, you know what was in that drink?" Vanessa shot back. "I didn't realize there was a drug that turned a smart woman dumb enough to eat rocks," Susan said. Her voice was kind, the way it always was when she was complimenting Vanessa. Vanessa fought back the urge to take the bait. Susan clearly still thought she could manipulate Vanessa by pretending to be nice. She took it too far every time. She kept telling Vanessa how smart she was. Fucking bitch. Stella's voice was rushed, the way it always had been when she was trying to prevent a blow-up. However, it is actually able to digest them. As long as we don't fly into the atmosphere, we are fine. A ship of this size is far too small for it to bother attacking, at least alone. Larger armadas or space stations or carriers or the artificial moons some of the empires built. Lots of tasty metals for it to eat. "But we are too small to be worth the energy?" Vanessa asked. She could picture the excited nod. Stella always got into explaining this stuff, even if she was still pretending to be irritated. Vanessa would have to talk to her after this and make sure it wasn't actually frustrating Stella. But Vanessa thought she knew her sister well enough to know that she was excited, and too small for it to register us as a threat unless we start flying around its atmosphere. That's why we are doing the orbital drop. You all are too small for it to register you as a threat, as long as you don't fire high-yield explosives into its back or start killing its constituent organisms. What happens if we do? Vanessa knew the information but wanted to keep the conversation going. It was always good to hear her voice. Felt like they were getting less time to talk lately. Too much time with Susan for Stella. "This species has some flying organisms it'll send your way. And up at us. At that point, they're going to lash out at any nearby vessel. They can hit speeds high enough to actually do ramming damage to even a high-yield shield." Vanessa had remembered that, of course, but it was good to hear Stella talk. "Okay, but what about Atmon 3? Christina said firmly, cutting her off. Hitting the atmosphere was always a trip. In a mech, it was a deafening roar. They had their boosters to control their descent, which was good because the pressure tried to buffet Vanessa back and forth. A psychic link with the Meg relayed the data as both numbers and sensations. Warmth that was just shy of painful, like a really good shower, and a weight that pressed on whatever part of the Meg was facing down. Then they were falling in atmosphere, and she knew. Vanessa put herself out of the memory harshly. Not that memory, not now. The power armor was like the Meg. Vanessa's link let her know exactly when to flip over and activate the afterburners in her armor to slow her descent. She landed gently. Christina landed just ahead of her, holding up a fist for her quiet and then motioning ahead. The woods of this place were large, purplish trees like organisms adapted to absorb reflected light of the gas giant overhead. They might actually be old world trees that had been modified, given that this planet had human inhabitants. Vanessa wished she could ask Stella for information. Nova might know. She was the second smartest person Vanessa knew. Well, she was the first now. Once she and Christina took that vacation, maybe Vanessa could talk to Nova about the future. Nova could info dump the way Stella used to. There were other benefits to Nova as well. It would be good to date outside of her type. Fucking focus. Didn't matter. What mattered was the castle ahead. This vampire didn't have a proper heart for it. That meant no spawned monsters. But there were plenty of other threats, especially on a parasite-infested rock like this one. The three of them sat moving in that direction, each armed with a melee weapon, a cryblade. In an ideal world, the cryblade wouldn't be needed. It was best to fight things like a vampire at range. Vampires, however, did not like when you fought them at range. And those fuckers were fast. If they wanted to get you and melee, they were probably going to get you into fucking melee. So they had the lightweight swords, made of an alloy that combined titanium, gold, mithril, and red divine ichor that was rendered down to its iron equivalent and balanced the scales in melee. Easy, fast, powerful, and especially dangerous against leeches. The castle itself was fitting for the world's technology level, made of a mixture of black and red marble known as Hellstone. Hellstone was favored by the undead in their construction, given how it reinforced their powers and reduced the strength of sunlight nearby, which also meant that at night this area was borderline pitch black. The world was still clear to Vanessa through her armor sensors as X-rays, radio waves, and sonar combined to give her a sense of her surroundings that had nothing to do with vision. Proper castle heart would have given the leech ways to dampen even those senses, but all they could do without that is reduce the visible spectrum of light. The interior wouldn't be like this, thankfully. Vampires still like to be able to see their lairs and show off their paintings, even if it would be more practical for them to live in pure darkness at all times. There would be segments of pure darkness as a defensive measure, but they could keep the fight away from them. They kept low to the ground as they moved, getting off the path but staying near it. Vanessa wanted so badly to start the fight properly, but knew that the safest option was to catch the vampire off guard, and not everyone living on these worlds was an enemy. Lots of them were just victims, like Stella. They moved through the forest slowly until Nova piped up over comms. Now that the mission was actually underway, there's none of the playful joking in Nova's voice. She sometimes would joke on mission if it was safe, but not like this, not for this job. Get off the path, into the woods. You've got a heat signature approaching you, a large group. Immediately, they got off the path and got into the forest, ducking low and going immobile so no sound would give them away. There were still people traveling the paths on the back of hexapedal creatures that navigated using sonar and looked a bit like grounded bats. Those were custom bioforms that vampires tended to import to any worlds they controlled. They actually were genetically engineered bats combined with some old world canines. Wovels. This was very much a vampire-controlled world of wovels were being used as mounts by human thralls. They had to wait. And as I felt a pool of that memory again, she tried to fight it. If she could ground herself then, they had to wait. Fuck. had to wait. It had been a long hunt. Vanessa did remember the briefing. This particular species of live-the-wars had a trait that made them uniquely useful to vampires. The side of the planet the live-the-war body that they turned to face the sun was covered by kilometer-tall plants so thick that the light that reached the ground was vastly reduced. Even this close to the star, there was no more than 200 lumens reaching the ground. This particular vampire had a castle core at the time, but didn't make a castle with it. She had a crawling throne. Vanessa had her sights on it. 15, maybe 16 meters tall, Vanessa said into the comms, keeping her voice low. The throne is fully empowered. It looks like there's about 20 people in it getting drained. Quadrupedal model, meaning it'll be hard to knock over. Got those weird, creepy spider legs they'd like. Armaments? Christina asked. 2 physical arms. One's got a sword held in it, other's got a shield. I'm also spotting 2 shoulder-mounted turrets. Looks like they can move independently. Blood tank is most of the way full. The leech is lounging on the throne in the core. That dry description didn't fully give the throne justice. Didn't mention how it looked like it was spun from fragments of obsidian stitched together, with strands made of veins. Didn't mention the eerie grace as its legs skid across the ground. Didn't mention the people visible through clear metal underneath the throne, hooked up to horrible machines that were draining their blood slowly. Didn't mention the helmet atop the throne like a twisted dark mockery of a medieval knight's helm. It didn't mention the way the arms bent in unnatural ways that no human mech would, because the pilot couldn't move her arms that way. But the vampire could control it all from a throne, purely mental. We've got 4. Shit. Vanessa swore as they started to approach. What is it? Nova demanded over the comms. Wovels, incoming! The bad wolves charged at them, 8 meters each, large ones. The parasite didn't seem to be worried about what her pets were doing. Fall back, Christina shouted. Nova, get down here and distract the leech. Vanessa shot back. What about the planet? You'll be attacked. Susan spoke up. Come on, you're smarter than this. Asshole, Vanessa thought. Stella once again to the rescue over comms. As long as we don't open fire, it will just treat us like a meteor. We can evade its defenses. Vanessa's stomach clenched. Stella, you're still on that ship. A half-beat later, she added, so is Nova. I'll be fine, Stella said over comms. You 3 are the ones in danger. Susan, come home safe. No worry for Vanessa. No worry for Vanessa. No worry. Vanessa stopped the thought before it could repeat another time. Vanessa stopped the memory. The Wovels were almost past. These weren't behemoths like the ones they had fought that time. Young creatures, not much larger than horses. They could handle them in these suits. But the sounds of their battle would have alerted the vampire. Fighting a vampire while it was controlling the creatures, that was a different story entirely. The path to the castle took them through a barren stretch of land where the trees and plants had long ago died from the lack of sunlight. Only strange fungi grew here in the perpetual twilight near the vampire's castle, and a few insect analogues that nested in the fungi buzzed about. There were guards on the castle. Vanessa let her scanner give her information. The vampire had not equipped her guards with off-world weaponry. Many of them didn't. It was a risk on worlds like these, giving these people access to power armor and mechs. They might get ideas like, hey, what if we use these on the people that feed off us constantly, or, oh, I bet the giant cannon on this thing could break down a castle wall, or, hey, I decided to name my mobile suit the Pitchfork. What do you all think? Which meant the guards were equipped with the best equivalent their world could produce to power armor. Instead of divine flesh, these suits were powered by the Ichor of Anthar, which also meant the vampire would have limited control over them and made them useless in rebellion. Give me a sec, Noah said. Give the scanners a moment to do their work so we know what you're up against. Getting readings from your suits and adding it to the ship telemeter. Terse and serious. Vanessa almost wished that she would crack a joke now. My trajectory is going to take me behind the planet. Wait for me to get out of communication shadow. Analysis will be done by then. So you're going to the backside to do anal, got it, Vanessa said. They were all speaking over comms, so there was no risk of even the vampire outside the armor hearing them from this distance. Any other time, that was the kind of joke that would have gotten even Susan laughing. All that she got was a weak, strangled chuckle from Nova. Was she crying? The indicator in Vanessa's hut let her know Nova was out of range. A moment later, Susan spoke. "Thanks," she said, catching Vanessa off guard. "And sorry about earlier. We both miss her. We're hurting. You didn't have to try and cheer us up. That was good of you." No backhanded compliment about her intelligence. Maybe Susan actually meant it this time. Maybe she had just been jealous too. "Let's hash this out once we get back to the ship," Vanessa said. "After we've killed this thing that took her from us, yeah?" Susan nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that." There was still a wary edge to her voice. You don't magically fix years of bickering that easy, but after the job. On a moon this size, if Nova was burning all out, Vanessa did some quick mental math. 7 minutes. No, wait. Ground scanners would pick up the thrust if she burned all out. Nova couldn't risk burning all out. Assume a lower burn that wouldn't get picked up, assuming Nova was going to burn towards periapsis once she was back over the horizon so she didn't slingshot off. 10, 11 minutes, and Nova would be back in range. Waiting was always hell at this point. Without Nova around, they had to be careful. Wovels were the real threat. By the time the suit scanners detected them, without Nova, without advanced. Maybe it was masochistic to not fight the flashback this time, but if she was going to remember everything else, she might as well remember this, right? Christina's voice had been completely unyielding. "Nova, get down here now! No arguments. Don't shoot unless you have to. Vanessa, move, now!" The last word snapped Vanessa out of a freeze, and she turned to run. The mechs were small, 9 meters tall units, enough to handle the crawling throne, but still in the size where the Wovels were a danger. Simple Aegis class models retrofitted with anti-vampire weaponry. Humanoid and blocky and covered in electrified spikes, an aftermarket addition to deal with massive organics like the Wovels. The helmet of each looked as much like a bucket as it did a helmet. They were blocky, ugly machines, not the night suits armies often used, but more sanded bricks roughly stuck together in a humanoid shape. But they got the job done. The Wovels were coming. These suits were fast, but the Wovels were faster. "Come on," Susan shouted. "Nova, Stella, we're gonna have to open fire soon." "Almost there," Nova shouted. At which point the ship burst through the tree covering. It was too small an injury for the planet-sized organism to register consciously, but it was enough to trigger some automated responses. Flying creatures began to descend from the canopy that was kilometers overhead. These looked like predatory flying reptiles of old Earth's history, but of massive proportions. Their skin glowed with patterns like runes, selectively evolved magic sigils formed over millions of years. The important part was that it allowed them to fly without flapping and through the vacuum of space as well as through atmosphere. At first, Vanessa's heart clenched. What were they doing? Those things could take down a vessel, especially if they had any kind of ranged attacks in their runes. Then she saw where they were flying and was so happy she could kiss Stella. That had to be her idea. Nova was smart, but she wasn't clever the way her sister was. "Oh, good idea," Christina shouted. That annoyed Vanessa. Christina should have thought of that. Christina was supposed to be good enough to lead Stella, and she'd missed this trick. "Go ahead and shoot," Christina said. Vanessa made a strangled, betrayed noise as the ship dropped down next to the vampire and the back hatch popped open. No. That raised the danger from the planet. But there was Stella, on the big turret on the main hatch, the biggest gun they had, a minigun nearly as long as the mechs were tall. At least it had to be. That gun couldn't be controlled from the cockpit, and Nova was never letting anyone fly a baby in a combat mission. Stella opened fire with the gun on the crawling throne while Nova unleashed the missiles. A red field surrounding the crawling throne sprung into existence, shielding. The holy forged rounds, made of the same alloy as the cryblades, would wear them down. The explosions and gunfire were all focused on the crawling throne. And the Lithovor's flying defenders were instinctive creatures. Now that they were roused, they went toward the sound of the Lithovor's irritation, which was now an itchy spot on its hide, where relative microbes were battling. The Lithivore would never remember this. It was so minor it would not register, but the flyers were its immune response. And they were going to the source of the irritation. Not the Vowels, not the mechs, not the main ship, the spot where all the damage was happening. The throne. "You got them focused. They'll deal with the vampire," Nova shouted over the comms. "You need to get away from here before we can pick you up." "Won't be a problem," Christina planted her mech's feet. "We are all getting out of this alive." There was the woman that Vanessa cared about, the woman she wanted to love. There was the angel that reminded Vanessa of the woman that had held Vanessa's hand when their mother beat her. Susan turned around. "Fuck all the way off, ugly," she screamed. Gods of the world, she was annoying, not the least of which because Vanessa had been about to say something similar. Stella always liked those lines. "Vanessa!" Stella shouted over comms. Vanessa planted her feet and whipped around. She knew that cry. The danger was imminent, so instead of switching to her ranged weapons, she popped the blades out of the back of her mech's wrists. One of the Vowels had caught up to her and leapt for her when she stopped. Vanessa slashed for it and was rewarded with a line of blood from the creature's back, while Susan and Christina opened fire on the other two. They couldn't shoot safely at the one in melee with Vanessa, though. It was fast, ducking under her next strike and slashing at the gut of her armor. There was the sound of rending metal. Vanessa felt it as feedback, a sensation less distracting than pain, but difficult to ignore. It wasn't that deep. Shallow cuts. Still enough to raise sparks. Vanessa slashed at it, and the Vowel leaned back and then let out a shriek. The most dangerous part of the Vowel. The scream from one of this size was a physical force that slammed into Vanessa and pushed her back. The shields of her mech and the dampeners on the cockpit were all that prevented Vanessa's eardrums from blowing and her brain from being scrambled by the sound. Then Susan slammed into its side with a spike-assisted shoulder check. Vanessa took the opening Susan had made by charging forward and thrusting her blade directly into the creature's brain pan before activating an electric charge through the blade to short-circuit its mind. The Vowel twitched a few times before it died. "Thanks," Vanessa said, hoping her surprise didn't show. "I love comforting Stella when she needs it, but I don't think she'd come back from losing you. Can't let anything happen to my future sister-in-law, right?" Vanessa took a deep breath before responding to calm the whirling emotions in her gut. "Right. Still, appreciate it." "Oh wow, you two can be nice to each other. I didn't know you knew how to do that," Nova said over the comms. "Can it," Christina said. "What about the prey? Scan is running, but we got to get mobile. The flyers are remembering us," Nova said. "Vanessa and Susan can make out back on the ship. Please do not provoke my sister and my fiancé against each other, Nova, okay?" "Relax," Susan said. "We can get along, can't we, Vanessa?" Before Vanessa could respond, a scream tore through the air. A chain shot out of the pile of flying creatures. It moved through the air like a bullet, faster than Vanessa's eye could follow. Straight for the ship, straight for the open hull, straight for Stella. Vanessa screamed a warning, but the chain wrapped around the turret and pulled. This next part played out in the cruel slow motion of a nightmare. Vanessa hadn't been close enough to see all this, but she knew how the ship worked, and she had a terrible, vivid imagination. She could see the chain wrapping around the base of the turret, not a natural way, propelled by momentum, but like some horrid, metallic tentacle. She could see Stella trying to unbuckle herself, her eyes wide with fear, but her body could only move at human speeds, and this was all happening so fast. Her neck would have snapped back when the chain pulled. If there was any mercy in the universe, that would have killed her. If the universe had mercy, none of this would have happened in the first place. There was one final scream over the comms from Stella, joining Vanessa's own. The rest of that hunt was a blur in Vanessa's memory. Nova getting up out of atmosphere to get away from the lithovore's defensive flyers. For any sign of Stella and the parasite. The flying creatures might have eaten Stella, but natural animals wouldn't eat undead flesh. The fact that they were both gone could only mean one thing. Stella was dead. Unless... Please no. Nova had tracked another vessel leaving the planet when she came down to pick up the others on the dark side of the lithovore. Without the damage to its plants, the flying creatures weren't dispatched. Just some ground-based organisms shooting balls of explosive substances that would help break up incoming meteors, but were easily evaded by a pilot with Nova's skill. After that, there had just been tears and rage. Everyone blaming themselves besides Susan, but really Vanessa knew it was all her fault. Her existence had one purpose and she had failed. Nova overcomes again. Analytics headed to your suits now. I've marked the targets I'm certain of and the best estimate I have of the castle's layout based on the readings. There's a choke sound. Vanessa's heart sank. 2 necroforms detected. Understood, Christina said tightly. You two gonna be okay? A leech is a leech, Susan said. Vanessa nodded. Christina would hear the lie in her voice otherwise. Ready up, Christina said. If she could tell Vanessa was evading the question, nothing in her voice showed it. Nova spoke up. That was surprising. She usually didn't speak after the ready check had been initiated. Please, come back, all of you. I know you're going to war, but be careful. No worries here, Vanessa said. This isn't a war. It's just vermicide with a side of payback. She picked her target, the one on the left. She marked it to their sensors. Christina's marker appeared over the one to the right. Susan's marker pulled over the one watching from the guard window. Once they all had their targets, Christina initiated a countdown, and the moment it hit one in their vision, they shot a single blast from their wrist-mounted weapons. Per the readings from the ship, the guard suits were steam-based, same as most technology in this world. However, the steam was heated by the ichor of Anther, which meant it was volatile, especially if the initial impact had a wooden tip. The explosions rocked the air. Stealth had to die eventually on a mission like this, and that was the right time to do so. The 3 guards exploding simultaneously triggered detonation from 2 other suits and tore open the front door, letting 3 of them run through at top speed. There weren't any more guards. That was odd. Where was everyone else? No castle heart, Susan said, confirming what Nova's readings had said. Christina said, good sign. Vanessa? Vanessa focused on the readings from his suit and the information provided by Nova. There were some things that her higher-than-average psionic attunement meant her suit could do that the others could not. The module was a way of detecting those powered by a variety of hostile deities such as the Bloodstar gods. Wouldn't work on suits. They were too well shielded. Everyone called it an evil detector. 2 of them, Vanessa said after a moment. Nova was right. One of them has the same signature as the one we fought before. The other is weak. That's the newborn. Christina looked at Vanessa. Ready? Always, Vanessa lied. In front of them was a massive double door made of some unique black wood. The carpet underneath their feet was thick and red and luxurious. The stone throughout was reinforced with both mana and metal. It was adorned with tapestries that laid out key elements of the history of vampires. Had the young vampire and her spawn taken over the castle from another one? Maybe it had been abandoned. Or maybe the young vampire's sire had gifted it to her. Didn't matter. Vanessa was hoping they could do some explosive renovations on their way out. Susan had kinetic strike gauntlets. She walked up and punched the 25-centimeter wood reinforced with steel bands. The door exploded under the blow. A shower of splinters flew into the room. If they got lucky, one of them could hit an unsuspecting vampire and end the fight early. Vanessa didn't wait to find out, and neither did Christina. They fired a quick volley of smite missiles into the room to disperse the disrupting holy water. Then they ran in. The place was exactly the kind of lair a vampire would favor. A long red carpet down the center, flanked by rows of pews four-chord that would not exist. There were corpses in the pews, dismembered ones that had been drained of all their fluids. The front of the room was half altar, half throne. The older vampire, the original target, lounged on the throne. She was seductive in her pallor, all curves and bust and impossibly grey skin that somehow paired well with her blood-red eyes. She wore a black gown that hugged her form and could be taken for an elegant lady at a party if not for the blood that stained her lower jaw and ran down her neck. The younger vampire was kneeling on the arm of the chair. She was dressed in a similar outfit, except the gown did not hug her form, but flared out around the waist, revealing that she was wearing fishnet leggings beneath, as well as fishnet sleeves. She had brilliant red hair and an achingly perfect figure, curved in all the right places while still being athletic. The muscles in her back rippled under Vanessa's gaze as she moved her head lower. She was licking blood off the elder vampire's bust. The elder had one hand in the back of the younger's hair and moaned while the younger's lips worked their way closer and closer towards her nipples. Vanessa focused on the older vampire and let loose a blast from her wrist, a volley of stakes. The elder let out a low moan of pleasure as she raised 2 fingers and a sword flew out of the darkness, intercepting the stakes mid-flight. That was blood mana. The fucking parasite was channeling blood mana, but there was no way one as young as this one was supposed to be able to work any kind of magic. What was going on? That crawling throne should have been the limit of the leech's power, but no. Not only was she channeling blood mana, but she was doing so while the younger vampire was sucking on her tits like a nursing infant. The sight was as sickening as Mom talking about her extramarital conquests, and also sickeningly hot, the stomach-churning arousal that Vanessa got every time she had walked past Stella and Susan's room and heard the passionate moans. "My daughter and I were having a lovely evening when you interrupted," said the older vampire, her voice throaty with ecstasy. "I was about to receive the most exquisite pleasure that can only come after a feeding frenzy. You all have ruined that." She brought down the 2 fingers. The sword moved to hover at her side like an obedient puppy. "Die!" It was the only word Vanessa could get out. She opened fire with everything on the elder vampire. A salvo of smite rockets, barrage of stakes, and plasma from both of her shoulder cannons. That damn sword intercepted all of the strikes, creating a cloud of smoke and mist just in front of the 2 vampires. And from behind it all, Vanessa could hear the elder's moans intensify. When she stopped and a quick spell from one of the vampires got rid of the cloud, the youngest stood up and cracked her neck, looking up at the eldest. "May I, mother?" Vanessa made herself look at the youngest. She knew what to expect. She knew what was coming. It still fucking hurt. Even if undead, had sunk her cheeks a bit. Even if the weird outfit that she was now wearing highlighted her curves in a way Stella never would have in life. Not compared to the baggy clothes she preferred, even if there was a fire in her eyes. Vanessa recognized her sister. It wasn't her, Vanessa told herself. Stella was dead, but it looked so much like Stella, and that had been Stella's body sucking on this vampire's teat. "Of course, darling. The one you wanted seems especially feisty." The matriarch, because that's what she was with this much power. She had to be a matriarch, and they were barely equipped for this kind of fight. Nodded to the newborn that had once been Vanessa's sister. She didn't bother covering her breasts, just stood up with them still exposed, completely unfazed. And Stella turned towards Vanessa. For a moment there was a sick, horrible joy in the fact that the one Stella's corpse had been looking forward to seeing was Vanessa, not Susan. It was stupid, it was monstrous, it was validating. Then Stella ran at Vanessa and both drew their swords. Stella's a dark steel blade that had a red aura. Then they started to dance. Stella had never been as good as Vanessa at melee combat. She didn't have power armor on right now, but she had all the augmentation that came with her death and unnatural rebirth. Vanessa still knew the first strike, Stella's favorite melee opening, a quick thrust to try and end the fight early. Vanessa swiveled to the side as Stella dove at her, barely pushing the blood-red blade away from her face. Vanessa turned that into a quick inward strike, her preferred counter that usually worked, but now Stella was fast enough to just barely manage to evade by leaning back, the blade slicing through the fabric that hung tight across her breasts. Breasts that Vanessa had always envied. She tried to move the blade down towards Stella's sternum, but Stella knew the trick, dropped to her back and kicking off the ground to the side to get away from the strike. She folded on herself like a spider and Stella rushed in again, thrusting hard for a deep blow. Vanessa pushed the incoming implement up. The power of the suit's armor strained against Stella's vampiric strength, bringing the 2 sisters face to face as Stella overcommitted. Vanessa swung in with a quick punch for Stella's gut with her free hand, but Stella grabbed the hand as it came in, stopping it just before the blow landed. She looked directly at Vanessa's visor, right where Vanessa's eyes would be, so it was like they were making eye contact. Then she kissed Vanessa's visor. One of her legs whipped up, wrapping around the back of Vanessa's armor before she could react, pulling her in while Stella ground against the front of her armor for a moment. "She thinks she has control over me," Stella said in a harsh whisper. "Help me slay her before you kill me. I don't want to exist like this." Then Vanessa was kicked away by Stella. Before she could give her response, she went flying across the room, striking one of the pews and shattering it under the impact. Stella whipped her blade and licked the length of it, slicing her tongue in two and then holding the sword between them as the vampire regeneration kicked in. When Stella had pulled away, her tongue was forked, and she was moving the two split halves individually. "What do you think, dear sister?" She sounded like she was talking to a lover, and Vanessa hated how her heart raced between that and the kiss. "You said I'd look hot with a split tongue." "You're not my sister," Vanessa growled, fury overtaking her as she got to her feet. "But if the abomination went to work against its sire, I'm still her." Stella's voice was low and sultry, like she was still trying to be seductive, but there was an undercurrent of sorrow to it, void of the dead gods. Was this actually her? Everyone said vampires lost their souls, but this sounded like how Vanessa remembered Stella when she was putting on an act. It sounded like the way Stella talked to Susan when she was trying to get out of chores with sex. How many times had Vanessa's traitorous mind wanted to hear that voice directed at her? "Prove it," Vanessa said. She could see the fight happening over Stella's shoulder. The sire was going against Susan and Christina. The two of them moved fast, ducking and weaving as the floating sword made its way across the battlefield, keeping them on the back foot. While giving them an opening to occasionally launch ranged attacks in the sire's direction, she was able to easily step away from the attacks. And the goddamn tits were still out. Stella made a "come hither" motion. "Come for me if you think you can handle me," Stella said. Vanessa charged, swinging her sword in a wild strike for Stella's throat. Stella stepped back, laughing as she parried the strike. Vanessa lost control for a moment, driven to a rage by how much this vampire was clearly trying to fuck with her desires. It looked so much like Stella, but dressed like a whore and laughing in the way that Vanessa had sometimes heard from Stella's room when Susan was there. All of Stella's moves. This was her. She knew her sister. Vanessa kept getting closer, and Stella kept staying one step ahead, one step back, driving Vanessa more wild with every moment as she darted in and out of the battle. Sometimes striking for her sister as well, but never quite managing to land the blow. That was when Vanessa saw what had happened. Their fight had come up right behind the sire. "I know how to prove I'm your sister," Stella said. "Do you want to see?" Vanessa nodded as she stepped back and readied the ranged attacks. "Don't let her," the sire started to say, clearly certain that her control over Stella would allow her the same amount of control over the neonate as she had over the blade. If she had been able to finish that sentence, she might have been right. Stakes and smite missiles launched from Vanessa's wrist at Stella. Stella stepped to the right. The rounds took the sire in the back, giving Christina and Susan the opening they needed to land their own attacks. Plasma quickly joined the purifying heat of stellar flame, more than enough to damage undead flesh. Vanessa lost herself in unloading on the vampire matriarch, load after load of ammo streaking from the mech suit. Joining the others, the three of them sprang their attacks across the elder vampire. The blood-bound sword fell to the ground. Stella spoke behind Vanessa. "I can feel myself. I'm back. Now that she's gone, I'm free." Vanessa froze. That didn't just sound like Stella's voice. That sounded like Stella. Same intonation, same cadence, same everything. That was her sister. Christina and Susan were turning towards the two of them. "Wait," Vanessa said, holding up her hands. "It's her. It's actually her." "Don't be stupid," Christina said. "She's dead," Susan snapped. "She's right behind me, and she's alive," Vanessa said to the three of them. Wait, three? Stella emerged from the shadows behind Christina and thrust the elder vampire's blade directly through the back of Christina's armor. Christina grabbed onto it and made a horrible sound as she fell forward. Vanessa stood frozen helplessly as her girlfriend fell back, impaled on the sword, dead or dying. Vanessa was frozen. Shock, horror, rage, but also relief. She wouldn't have to choose. Sick. She was sick. Stella was smiling as she took a step towards Susan and flicked her wrist, tearing off Susan's helmet. Stella grabbed the side of Susan's head and made eye contact. Susan tried to bring up her arms to fight back, but Stella had already established eye contact without the filtering visor, and Susan lowered her arm, going limp as the hypnotic gaze set in. Vanessa raised her hand. She had to kill this monster before. "We can be together." Stella kept her eyes on Susan, but the words were clearly aimed at Vanessa. Just like how their mom used to talk to Stella while staring at Vanessa. Vanessa knew she was supposed to listen now. "I'm hungry," Stella said. "Althoria, my sire, I fed her poisoned blood, which is why she was weak enough for you to win this fight. That meant I couldn't eat. Let me eat and you and I can be together." "I don't want to become a vampire," Vanessa said. "You won't." Stella had always been a terrible liar, at least as far as Vanessa was concerned. That was, without a question, the truth. "I don't want you like that. I don't want to be inside of you. Not yet. That comes later." Vanessa froze. "Please." Stella's voice was a knife rubbing on silk. "I want you inside of me. You can fill me the way you always wanted." Why now? Why was this only happening now? Tears were running down Vanessa's face as her cock grew hard in her armor. "I knew," Stella said, still maintaining a locked gaze with Susan. Susan's mouth was slack and she was drooling. "In life I couldn't. I couldn't risk it. I wanted to, but that's why I choose Susan. She reminds me of you. Same reason you choose Christina, isn't it?" Christina wasn't dead, and the disgusted noise she made from inside her helmet proved that, but she was out of the fight. She sounded like she was in pain. Each breath was labored and raspy. She was groaning. Part of Vanessa wanted to go to her and try to help stem the tide of blood. But Stella was still talking. "I'm a vampire now, but I'm still me. I just don't feel bound by the norms. Why can't we be together? I'd be hunted for what I am anyway, but I could have you. I could finally have you." "What?" Vanessa barely managed the word. "Do it," Stella said. "Kill my proxy as I kill yours. Free ourselves of the limitation and we can finally be together." "Fuck," Christina managed. Vanessa, you aren't. It was your..." She trailed off, her breathing gurgling. "You're not really like this," she managed. Christina was right, wasn't she? Vanessa took aim at Stella's back. She was a monster. Her sister was dead and Vanessa was no fool. She pulled the trigger at the same time as Stella lunged at Susan. Fangs first. Fangs broke Susan's throat at the same time as a stake went through Christina's skull. Vanessa stared in horror at her own hand while Stella fed on Susan. 1 split second. It really intended to shoot Stella. Maybe she'd been controlled. Maybe that had been Stella and not... No. No hiding behind that. "Vanessa!" The voice in her ears was a desperate plea. "Get out of there! Run, please!" Nova, scared, sobbing. "Please, I'm going to... Fuck. Vanessa, your vitals are good. What's going on?" Vampiric control didn't work like that. There would have been obvious magic or eye contact there. Had been no spell work, and Stella had not looked away from Susan. "Vanessa, say something!" Nova was in a frenzy. "Say anything! Call me a bitch, make a joke, fucking anything, please!" The voice was distant. Vanessa had made the call. She knew she had. Of course, she was going to. The only person surprised was Christina, and she didn't have any thoughts anymore. Christina would have died anyway. At least Vanessa had made it painless, just like the food, just like the exercise. It wasn't about Vanessa and Stella, it was about what was best for Christina. "Please," Nova's voice was small and rough, coming between heavy breaths. "I just wanted to. Please, not all of you." Stella was feeding as Vanessa lowered her hand. Stella was moaning and gasping in pleasure. The sound made Vanessa's cock stir between her legs, even as blood poured out of Christina's helmet across the stone floor. She tried again to recall that horror, to remind herself how terrible it had felt to betray Christina. But honestly, she was just so fucking turned on. They were perfect for each other now. Both monsters. "Run," Vanessa said quietly. She was surprised how calm her voice sounded given the tears streaming down her face. 12-Blade Empire, Jericho Station. No, Nova said, the word of a sob and a prayer and a curse. They're at peace with us. Closest. Stay away. Vanessa's voice really was eerily calm here. Then again, why wouldn't it be? This is what she had always wanted, right? Oldest dream and beloved nightmare. I'm not giving up on you, Nova said, her voice a snarl. Whatever is going on, just tell me and I can. I'm not going to make it. We were wrong. It was something she should say. Something to make Nova feel better, or right. The thing Vanessa had wanted. Vanessa took a deep breath. Nova had started to choke on her tears again. It gave Vanessa room to speak. It's not your fault. Vanessa, don't! Nova shouted, fury and pleading, and a deep, all-encompassing void of grief in those two words. It was too much for Vanessa to bear, so she killed the comms. The castle trembled as Stella turned to face Vanessa, licking Susan's blood off her lips. Susan fell lifeless to the floor, and the castle trembled again as Stella closed the distance between herself and Vanessa in a single step. The straps of Vanessa's armor were torn away by Stella's claws. She could have fought back. She should have fought back, but her sister was undressing her with hunger in her eyes, and it did not look like a hunger of blood. Hopefully Nova would flee. Vanessa was exactly where she belonged. Take me, Stella moaned, pulling Vanessa free of her armor. Take me the way you always wanted to. She started to kiss Vanessa's neck. Take me the way you needed to all this time. It was too much. It was far too much. Vanessa started to kiss back, hesitantly at first. She was worried about tasting Susan's blood, but she didn't. Stella tasted the way that Vanessa had always imagined. Her lips were soft and pliant and slightly floral. She was warm against Vanessa, warm and soft, except for one area where she, like Vanessa, was hard. It was everything that Vanessa had ever dreamed. She sunk her fingers into Stella's arm and moaned. She let go of all control. She needed this. She started to rip away Stella's clothes. Stella moaned and ground against Vanessa as she did. The moment her top was clear, Stella pressed Vanessa's head to her teeth. The perfect breast that Vanessa had pretended to not see so many times were now under her tongue. Now. 3 betrayals, 1 not by my hand, Stella moaned. Vanessa didn't understand the words and didn't care. She was too lost in the taste of her sister's skin. Instead, she felt just her hunger grow. She scraped her teeth over her sister's nipple, running her tongue around the areola. Vampires, while still full, were able to experience the full range of sensation, and Stella had just fed. Stella's hand came off the back of Vanessa's head, and she finally lifted herself up to kiss her sister on the lips again. Her tongue danced in her sister's mouth. She tasted so good, so much better than Christina ever had. She pushed the thought aside. Nothing was going to ruin this moment, not even the coppery smell of Christina's blood. Stella's hands were going to the waist of Vanessa's pants, and Vanessa's hands were doing the same. Their cocks sprung free, the one area where Vanessa had always had an edge over Stella. Stella traced one finger across the top of Vanessa's cock and made a low, throaty sound. Do you have any idea how badly I've wanted this? Not half as badly as I have, Vanessa said, her voice husky with need. Otherwise we would already have done this. Stella stepped forward, her cock directly under Vanessa's, and took both of them in her hand and started to rub back and forth, letting their cocks touch. The smell of Stella's pre-cum hit Vanessa's nose and she moaned a low groan. With a sound and courage, Stella pressed her head down to Vanessa's tits. Now it was Vanessa's turn to moan. She started to rock her hips in time with Stella's hand, more frenetic, more needy. Stella pulled her head up to speak. A profane act abhorrent by the true star gods. The castle trembled. What? Vanessa asked. Stella kissed Vanessa hard, grinding against her, and Vanessa felt her cock twitch as Stella placed her claws against Vanessa's breast. Vanessa arched her back reflexively to lean into the touch. Then Stella turned around and wriggled her ass invitingly. The double hand job hadn't just been for pleasure. Vanessa's cock was well looped. Stella must have had something on her hand. Vanessa tried not to think about where that could be coming from. It was dark enough in here to not make out any discoloration, and it didn't fucking matter. In a single smooth motion, Vanessa thrust into Stella. Stella screamed and ached her back in pleasure, pulling her hand over her head to grab the back of Vanessa's head. Fuck me, Stella said in a low groan. Vanessa obliged. Her sister leaned back against her, running her hands through Vanessa's hair. Vanessa brought up her hands to grab her sister's tits, and Stella kept slamming back quicker and quicker as Vanessa thrust more and more. Stella's cries rose, and they were nothing like Christina's. They were like the noises that Vanessa had heard back at home when Stella thought she was asleep, but now she wasn't holding back. She wasn't trying to be quiet. She was screaming. She was gasping. She was panting. Vanessa, please. Normally, Vanessa could last much longer than this, but she wanted this for so long. She had needed it so badly that she felt her cock pulse as an orgasm tore through her. She lost her vision for a moment. She felt herself start to fall, but Stella's hands, possibly inhumanly strong, held her up. When her vision cleared, Stella was facing her. One hand was on the back of Vanessa's head, and she pulled herself closer, bringing her hand up to Vanessa's chest. She was still rock hard, and Vanessa knew she'd be good for another round in just a moment. One of the benefits of HRT, the refractory period, meant she could go all night, and she was going to. Years of dreaming of this meant she absolutely was going to. Do you want me next? Stella asked. Do you want me inside of you? Vanessa nodded and leaned into Stella's hand when it brushed against Vanessa's breast and slid up until it was resting on top of Vanessa's breast right over her heart, the claws of Stella's fingers pressing against Vanessa's skin. Please. Stella's smile showed fangs, and she spoke in a low, husky whisper. The heart of someone who loves what she shouldn't. As quickly and easily as Vanessa had penetrated Stella a moment ago, Stella pushed her hand through Vanessa's breast, through the muscles underneath, and tore Vanessa's ribcage. For a moment, Vanessa could feel Stella's fingers inside her, feel those fingers she had just finally felt around her cock now wrap around her still beating heart. Was it good for you too? Stella asked before shoving Vanessa back. Vanessa fell. Time slowed. Stella held her heart over her head. It beat in Stella's hand, and she let the blood squirt over her face. Stella licked the blood off her arm as Vanessa's vision started to go dark. Thank you, you disgusting pervert of a sister, for giving me what I needed. Vanessa coughed. Hard. No, why? She had loved her sister. This had been an act of love. This has been for being with... Don't worry, Stella grinned, staring up at Vanessa's heart, as dark power from the ceiling of the castle descended, pouring into the heart. Blood-red strands and purple ones. Stella took a crystal from her sire's corpse. I didn't lie. The power of a Bloodstar god and a dungeon core. Mom had been wrong about that. At least Vanessa could die knowing she got Stella, and Mom was wrong. I love... Vanessa started to choke. Oh, no goodbye, Stella said. I'm not done with you. Then Stella thrust the dungeon core into Vanessa's still beating heart as Vanessa's fingers went numb. Her hands too. Stella couldn't stop this. Death was peaceful. At least there would be peace. She closed her eyes, and then she was staring down at Stella. Staring down at Stella from the perspective of the fingers that were holding her up. She was smaller than Stella, so much smaller. Really, she was the size of the blood-coated gem, of the dungeon core. There are many ways to make a castle hard, but this particular ritual was the one my sire had already set up, Stella said. That's the good news. You pathetic pervert, you wanted me so badly that you'll have me. I'll be inside you forever. And then Stella placed Vanessa in the empty spot on top of the throne. Vanessa felt herself connect to the entire castle. Her body. My heart, Stella kissed Vanessa, massive lips brushing the gem. Everything the way it needed to be. Isn't that right, dumbass? She laughed as Vanessa tried to scream, only to find that she had no voice that could be heard.